This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. All right, we've got a fun episode today on the show. We have Peter McCormack. Peter, of course, is the host of the What Bitcoin Did podcast. Peter is one of the biggest podcasters across Bitcoin and crypto. And so the first half of the show, we talk about podcasting. We talk about what life is like in Bedford at the moment. Peter gives some background on why his podcast continues to focus on the Bitcoin ecosystem. And did you know he recently hit the 5 million podcast downloads milestone? So that's very impressive. Good to see. Well done, Peter. And then at the end of the show today, we do the Crypto Conversation hot takes. We have a bit of fun and we get Peter's thoughts on everything from Trump versus Biden, stock to flow, UBI, and of course, Peter's favorite sci-fi movies. It's a fun one. All right, let's get into it. My guest today is the Bilzerian of Bedford, Mr. Peter McCormack. Peter, of course, is the host of the very popular What Bitcoin Did podcast. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am very well, and look, it's a pleasure to be talking to you. So, you know, I thought with this podcast, you know, I haven't done too much preparation myself because I feel like I know a bit about you because I've listened to a number of your podcasts and I follow you on Twitter and you're quite a high profile guy. So I thought today would just be an opportunity just to kind of shoot the shit and talk about Bitcoin podcasting and see where we get to. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great to me, man. Open book here, so happy to talk about anything.
All right. Well, first off, how's Bedford? Tell us, how's life in Bedford treating you? How has the pandemic experience been in Bedford?
Yeah, Bedford's great. The Bitcoin mecca of the world is doing absolutely great. I love this funny little town I live in. It's been a very strange. What are we now? 6-7 months. Very strange. Outside of obviously what is like really terribly sad for some people, people got sick and have lost lives. That is terribly sad. On a personal level, actually, I think it's been mostly good for me in that it's been a chance to kind of reshift and rethink my kind of life and priorities. The previous 2 years have been, I'd never worked so hard. I would get on a plane and go off for 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, I could take 10, 15 flights, go to multiple cities and land, go and do an interview, go back to the hotel, send it to my producer, prepare for the next one. And it was just very, very intense. And the travel side had to end. So because of that, I had to change the way I did things. I did remote interviews like we're doing now, which I never think are as good, but, I've got used to it. But I've had a bit more time to focus on doing other things. Like I like to do things outside of Bitcoin. I have my other podcast, Defiance. And so I had a chance to kind of like focus on the craft of what I produce, which has been very cool. I've had a chance to spend a lot more time with my children. And it's not that I didn't get time before, it's just I'm separated. So it's still essentially 50-50. But I think I used to come back from those times traveling. I'd be very tired and maybe not as present. I'm a little bit more present with my children now, which is another good thing. And I think I've got a bit more healthy. I've given up drinking, which has been great. I've redone my garden, So mostly it's good. And I don't think I'm going to go back to the traveling the way it was, because I think a bit like, how all these companies are saying, well, we're not going to go back to having an office. We're going to keep a remote workforce. I think it's a bit totally like that on a personal. Yeah, a bit like that on the personal level. I've realised the benefits, for myself and my health and my family of being around and being present. So, yes, look, there's obviously a tough economic shock coming for a lot of people, and that is going to be shit. And there's been some terrible things about this. But I think all you can do in a situation like this is try and make the best of it for yourself and the people around you. And I think on the most I've done that. I'd say about 80% done that, and I'm working on the other 20%. How is it for you? Which part of Australia are you in?
We're actually in New Zealand, Peter.
Oh, sorry. Why did I think you were in Australia?
I don't know, but that's okay. We have you're probably aware that there's sometimes a tense relationship between Kiwis and Aussies. So, but no, I'm in Auckland. So Auckland is obviously it's the biggest city in New Zealand. And look, I don't know how much you're aware of what is happening down here, but by most standards, or if you compare New Zealand to anywhere else in the world, we're probably doing better than most. And obviously, we're a remote small island of a nation with about 5 million people, so pretty good sort of starting conditions. So once we were able to lock our border down, we've been able to, for the most part, keep COVID out. But of course, as a lot of New Zealanders now are coming home, and so invariably we've had 1 or 2 cases that have slipped through at the border, but the Prime Minister or the government has shut the country down very quickly when that's happened. So by and large, we are COVID free. Yeah.
Well, you have an excellent Prime Minister as well. She's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think she has some pretty good qualities too. She's a great communicator, and she has the E word, empathy. But you just sort of compare her to your man Boris or Mr. Trump, and it's quite a stark juxtaposition, right?
Yeah, I read an article recently about the response to COVID, and they did a gender comparison between kind of country leaders, and it felt like those who were led by a female leader had kind of weathered the storm better. I'm not sure how true that is now. Look, it's like all these things. It's a very difficult situation. I think there's lots of people who are very concerned with the overreach of the state during this process, and many people from the very start called this out as like ridiculous and you can't put us on lockdown. What about our liberty? I think that argument is a lot stronger now. I think at the start it was very concerning because we saw this news coming in from China about this terrible disease that was stretching the hospitals and people were dying. We were seeing videos of people just like dead laying on the street, and I think even the most conservative of people would still have been looking at it going, hold on, this looks kind of scary. And I understood. I know the some people are like, well, you're a bloody statist. I understood some of the initial concern by the government, because whether you believe in the state or not, the state kind of has a responsibility to its people that democratically voted for them. And I understood why there was a concern and why lockdowns happened, whether or not you agree with them. To see it happen globally in almost every country, there's a reason why. I think now we're coming into these second waves. I think they're going to struggle to kind of enforce the same levels of lockdown, because they're talking, for example, in the UK now about a second nationwide lockdown. I think if they try that, that's going to lead to a lot of social unrest. So yeah, it's a peculiar situation to just track and try and understand what is the best.
Yeah, look, it really is. It just feels like just a volatile time in the world, and I think you're exactly right. People are, they're willing to put their lives on hold and kind of take that financial and mental health hit the first time if they think it needs to be done. But you can't really keep on expecting people to play ball and do that over the long term. But yeah, it's just the nature of pandemics. What do you do? They're unpredictable, and everyone is just learning as we go. Let's switch it up to more positive topics, Peter. I did see, I think you tweeted a week or so ago that your podcast, What Bitcoin Did, you smashed the 5 million downloads, which is, that's huge. So, well, congratulations. And because you and Pomp really have the two biggest podcasts in crypto, and you're both quite relentless in terms of, your work ethic, I guess, and, you know, pumping out multiple episodes ongoing sort of week after week. And you talked before about, you know, what a grind that must have been when you were actually traveling around the world and doing that live. Did you ever think you'd get this big?
No. This is Dirk. It's ridiculous, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's sometimes overwhelming to think about it. Sometimes, most of all, I'm just really fortunate and grateful, and just hope I don't fuck it up, which I definitely have within my arsenal. I'm definitely capable of doing that. No, I mean, look, I started this podcast by chance, right? Through a series of events, you know, where my life was unwinding at one point. I found myself at a retreat in Italy with a very successful podcaster called Rich Roll, and he became a good friend of mine. And he's from Los Angeles. I was there one day, and I just got into the Bitcoin thing and said to him, "Look, mate, I'm thinking of doing a podcast." He's like, "Yeah, you should. This is how you do it." And suddenly, 3 years later, I've traveled to 30 countries. I've interviewed hundreds of people, and what was really just going to be a side gig hobby has turned into a career, which has had all these kind of all these consequences I wasn't really prepared for, and haven't always known how to handle. And it's a very strange thing. But most of all, I just feel like really lucky, because I get to do a job that I love. I mean, on the whole, I love doing this. I mean, your work today and your work this, I guess, is it evening for you?
Yeah, it's I think we're 11 or 12 hours ahead of you. So it's 8 o'clock at night right now.
Yeah, 11 hours. Yeah, so it's your evening, it's my morning, and our job is to have a chat with each other. I mean, that's great. And
could be worse. Could be worse.
Yeah, and like this morning, I take my son to school, and after this, I'm going to head down the gym, and then I'm going to come back and work, and maybe do a bit of gardening. Like, it's a very flexible job. I mean, it comes with a lot of pressures, but I mean, life comes with pressures, but you know, it's a very flexible job, and I'm also getting to the point creatively to pursue things I want to do. Like, that's the ultimate goal, where you can creatively pursue things that you want to do. Like, I just did this 4-part series for my other show, Defiance, about this band, The Ghost Inside, who I'm a big fan of, and that was an amazing thing to get to do, to work on that for 3 months. So yeah, mostly I just feel very, very lucky. I don't know how it all happened, but here we are.
For sure. And look, I think you made the decision, I don't know how early on it was, but I suppose to focus the first podcast, WBD, on Bitcoin, right? So, and I think, you know, without putting words in your mouth, you probably, had the 2017 experience that a lot of us had, you know, in the bull market, and then getting burnt by altcoins and realizing that, especially if you're pitching your show for, you know, people that are perhaps just starting out, and well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Peter, but I guess what I'm saying
No, I know what you're saying.
Is what it is. You know, as you look back now, because the world is a different place in 2020, right? I'm talking about crypto. So there's this massive DeFi narrative happening, and crypto does start and end with Bitcoin, but there is more to crypto. I guess what I'm saying is, do you still ever feel that you're hemmed in by choosing to focus on Bitcoin, or are you still happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the reason I went Bitcoin only wasn't for being burned. I mean, I was mainly burned by Bitcoin, by investing into mining, not knowing what I was doing there, sure. and lost a fortune there. And also that market dropped as well. The move into Bitcoin only was a couple of things. I mean, it's this very strange world. Like, you can't win. If you're into multiple cryptocurrencies, you get yelled at for giving a platform to shitcoiners. And if you're Bitcoin only, you get called a maxi and closed minded, blah, blah, blah. So whatever happens, you're going to get a lot of pressure. I was getting a lot of pressure from Bitcoin people for covering altcoins. And at the time, I kind of like took a step back and thought, okay, like, what is it I want to do here? What is it I really care about? Let's look at my portfolio. Well, I only hold Bitcoin. Okay, why do I only hold Bitcoin? Well, I believe in it and I understand it. And I think it can be a useful tool for many people. And I also had a lot of interest in kind of human rights things, and I always saw Bitcoin as a tool that can help people in certain situations. It's not It's not a silver bullet for solving all the world's problems, but it can help people in certain situations. So I was like, okay, right. So if I carry on crypto, it's just a crypto show. It's essentially a finance show. If I focus entirely on Bitcoin, well, I'm focused on something that I understand and a technology I understand a little bit. But it allows me to cover these other topics I wanted. So, for example, I originally covered Ross Ulbricht, and then I covered Venezuela, etc., etc. So I was just like, okay, it's going to make a lot more sense for me to focus on Bitcoin only, and also, therefore, it gives me, Laura Shin has a very successful podcast, as does Pomp. It allows me to like carve out my kind of niche as being Bitcoin only, but for kind of like beginners, hopefully. So I made the decision, and then in hindsight, I think it was definitely the right thing to do, and what it did is I think it got me to the position of understanding a lot of the failings of altcoins and shitcoins quicker, because I was able to like look a little bit more objectively at it rather than think, oh, I'll just cover it because I want to have an interview. So it was a combination of things, but it's a decision I'm really glad I've taken. It's funny, there are some times where there's like specific kind of altcoin, shitcoin things that I want to talk about, and I have to think about it very carefully because what would the reaction be? So, for example, I just covered the INX thing, which was Samson Mao, Jameson Lopp, and Alan Silber. They got a lot of pressure for the creation of this INX token. Now, a lot of the debate is they've become shitcoiners, they've created a shitcoin, and I thought that is a useful thing to cover because, like, I have a disclaimer on my website. It says I will cover. I won't get this word for word perfect, but I will cover altcoins if I think it is relevant to Bitcoiners. And as Liquid is a Blockstream project, as INX will be moving to Liquid, and there is this potential to tokenize securities, I wanted to take a look at it. I thought it was worth it. Now, obviously, some people have now said I'm shilling or ICOs and shit coins, but no, I'm not. I was taken because I wanted to look at this as an alternative. Like, does it have any value? And if you listen to the show, you will see I gave the guests a very tough time, and my conclusion at the end is that this isn't a shit coin. It's a shit investment. I think it's a poor investment. I wouldn't do it. And I think there was some hypocrisy with some of the guests, which I stood up for. But I think I was fair in the way I dealt with it.
Yeah, I think so too. And look, I followed that debate a little bit because I did a show on INX myself. Look, I mean, you can't call it a scam because it's a legitimate the business itself is, they have some a really solid team. God, that sounds like a cliche, but no, they do, a really solid team of traditional finance guys, and they're trying to build the bridge between crypto and Wall Street and all that good stuff. And of course, they're doing effectively the world's first SEC approved security token IPO, right? And yeah, so whether that's interesting or not to someone is up to them, but yeah,
it's a tough thing. Like, in the end, you just got to accept, like, you cannot please everyone. There's going to be criticism. That's fine. I accept criticism, but I stand by doing that show. I also stand by, for example, having the interviews regarding Ethereum recently, because there are people who are putting Bitcoin on Ethereum. They're wrapping their Bitcoin on Ethereum. Therefore, it is right that that's covered, because I will have people listen to the show into Bitcoin who might consider wrapping it. So I think it's important for people to understand what Ethereum is. Does that mean I'll cover Tron? No. Binance Chain? No. Won't be covering Litecoin. None of those things will be covered, but I will cover Ethereum because there is a significant amount of Bitcoin that is now wrapped on it. So people need to understand those risks.
Yeah, and look, I think it's inevitable that as this DeFi thing just continues to grow and grow, everything in crypto is just going to become more interconnected and interoperable, and that's the end goal, right? For everything to talk to each other, blockchain to blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it depends on who you are. Like, some, different shows do different things. Yeah, I'm comfortable where I've taken the show to, and the position I'm taking with it. And you know what? Look, it is what it is, right?
How was it talking to Vitalik?
You know what? Very interesting. Very interesting. And you know what? Fair play to him for doing it, because I've trolled him hard in the past. Too hard, to the point of regretting it. Some of the trolls I've put out there, because it made me a hypocrite in things I've complained about people trolling me for. But no, he's fine. He's fine to talk to. I think he's an interesting character. I think he's solving problems, and when he gets to another problem, he's therefore thinking how to solve that. I worry that Ethereum is just this big, complex technical kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's an overly complex solution to something that isn't required. But a lot of people come back and say, no, you're wrong, blah blah blah. I mean, my main issue with Ethereum is it just seems to be like so much nonsense on there that I've come to the conclusion that Ethereum now is a game. Like Bitcoin is for me, Bitcoin is a financial system. It's a way. It's like Fort Knox. It's a vault for sending wealth around the world. Yes. It's a very secure. That's what it is for me. Whereas Ethereum, I think, is a game. And it comes with risks, and your goal is to exit that game with as much money as possible, whether that's dollar, Bitcoin, whatever. But I think long term is probably screwed.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see, and it's one of those things like when you have someone like Vitalik on the show, and this is what you always talk about, right? Not being super technical, and as and crypto, there's obviously the scale between sort of first entering into crypto and just standing at the top of the rabbit hole, and then someone like a programmer or a coder or a Vitalik or an Adam Back. There's a lot of space in between.
Yeah, but like I said, I think he's just technically solving problems, and he gets the next one, and then he has to come up with a technical solution. And I just think it's like that's all they seem to be jumping from solution to solution to solution. But my conclusion is I just have no need for it in my life. Like if I wanted to play the DeFi game, and I feel like all the people playing it understand it's a game and they're all competing against each other, then play the game. But I have no need. Don't have the time to learn it. I don't have the need to play it, and it's just not something I have a need for in my life.
Sure. So, okay, well, there's a DeFi game, there's an Ethereum game, but there are Bitcoin games as well, or Bitcoin narratives. So, you did a show, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago, with a regular recurring guest, Mr. Plan B. I'm sure those are always popular shows in terms of the downloads, Peter.
Dude, that one was insane. Okay, so my kind of average downloads per show is around 20,000, let's say,
and that's pretty good.
Yes, that is pretty good. And then I don't know what you tend to do, but like, and a not
Less
so good, a not so good show will do if it's under 15,000, it's a less popular show, and I still do some of those because they're important subjects I want to cover.
Sure.
But this one I can tell you very quickly because it's kind of insane. This one has done 71,000 essentially downloads in, and we're talking basically a week. And on my Libsyn platform, because that's not including like the YouTube one, it's like the biggest. It's done more than Nick Szabo. It's done more than my Andreas show. It's amazing what that show did.
And is that partly because they're not necessarily tied into the stock to flow model, but I suppose every few months it is nice just to, get a little dose of, Bitcoin. I don't want to say Bitcoin hopium, but just,
Yeah, but no, it's the hype. It's it's the moon juice. It's the number go up. That's what it's the exciting thing.
For sure. Yeah. So what's your take on Bitcoin, and where do you see Bitcoin in terms of, I don't know, the current market cycle, stock to flow? What do you think's happening? Yeah,
stock to flow is interesting, and Plan B, has his critics.
He does,
and he has his supporters, and I don't know. And he always says, if the model, it's a model, and models can fail, and that's fine. It absolutely could fail. I am less into the kind of algorithmic side that through post each halving it will see these kind of like continuous jumps. Will it get to 100,000? I don't know. But the thing I actually find more interesting than that is where he, in his updated version of the model, the cross-asset model, where he actually started talking about the kind of evolutionary life cycles of Bitcoin. And that I find really interesting because I can see that, where it was money and then gold 2.0 and then financial product. And now, like unexpected, was this thing that came out of the blue was the micro strategy thing, where they essentially put 250 million, which is 50% of their treasure, into Bitcoin. And that is this next evolutionary stage where companies might start holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I hold in terms of my podcast. I mean, it's nothing like MicroStrategy, but for me, it's a significant amount of money. I'm holding it in Bitcoin because I feel it's long term, it's safer there than holding it in cash. And then what's the next stage after that? Is it that it becomes adopted by nation states? And I think these evolutionary stages are very interesting. And then I think if these evolutionary stages prove true, because of the 21 million fixed cap, basics of supply and demand, the price will accelerate. Whether it tracks against this specific model to hit certain price targets, that I don't know, and that I care less about. But the adoption through these evolutionary stages, I think, is very interesting and kind of important.
Yeah, look, I agree with that, and I think how you're talking about even small to medium-sized businesses putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? And we've seen there's been a few Twitter threads recently of what you'd almost describe as kind of just the next layer up from a mom and pop style business, right? And just people kind of going, they've obviously just fallen down the rabbit hole. They've probably listened to a Plan B podcast and one of your shows and gone, suddenly the light bulb moment. And in the current environment, it just does kind of make sense.
Well, I think it's difficult for mum and pop investing, and the difficulty with mum and pop investing is like, how much liquid cash do people actually have? If you've got like a couple of £1,000, dollars, whatever, in your bank account, thinking about putting a significant amount of that into Bitcoin can be quite scary. And it doesn't matter what people say about inflation. In most countries, especially westernized countries, inflation has a slow and kind of sinister debasement of your purchasing power. It can be that 1 to even up to 5% per year. It's very different in someone like Argentina, and especially someone like Venezuela, where I've been there, I've seen it firsthand, where currencies are destroyed, or what's happened in Lebanon recently. But let's talk about Western nations first. To then convince them, that couple of thousand, you should put some of that into Bitcoin, and then potentially see it 10-20% drop. That's going to be very scary for them, and I can understand why they might not do it. Now, if you're somebody who has hundreds or tens of thousands, you might go, you know what, I'll put a few thousand in, and I'll put that there for the long time. That's fair enough. And then you're going to have people who've just got deeper conviction because, like you say, they're down the rabbit hole. Michael Sawyer from MicroStrategy, he obviously has a very deep conviction for Bitcoin and put 250 million in there. I have a very deep conviction and have 60% of my company funds in there and a significant of my personal wealth in there. It just depends on who you are. But look, at least the option is there for people if they want it.
Yeah, look, I agree, but I think you're right. It's just as simple as, it comes down to network effects, supply and demand, and market cycles. And once we kind of breach that last all-time high, it only needs a little bit of FOMO, and then, all bets are off. And if you start talking about nation states and so on, then, well, we'll see. But switch gears again. I just want to cover off some podcasting stuff. What did I want to say? Any thoughts on, it's kind of an open-ended question, I guess, but where do you see the future of podcasting going, or content creation, or just talk about, what you want to do yourself? Because I know you're branching out into kind of short-form documentary filmmaking, and I think I even saw you tweet at one stage that you wanted to come to New Zealand to do something. You've done a lot of traveling, but yeah, so what comes next, assuming that, the world gets turned back on?
Well, I'd love to come to New Zealand. That would be awesome. I think I'd rather have it as a holiday, though, than to work. So I think what's very interesting in the world, let's just say broadly content creation, is that there is this kind of blurring of the lines between, content creators and journalists. And we're gradually seeing people who are able to create an audience or have some kind of viewpoint, some kind of approach, be able to create their own audience to self-finance, while at the same time, large media organizations in some places are struggling. There's just, the US as a lens, it's very difficult to take either CNN or Fox News seriously. But also print news has struggled. It's struggled to move digitally because people want stuff for free. And it's struggled to maintain its print publications just because of the way advertising has changed. But you are starting to see like individuals. I must subscribe to about 10 individuals now. As an example, Matthew Taibbi, I think he's, I should know this. I think he's Rolling Stone.
Yeah, he is. He's a Substack, isn't he? Yeah. What do you like about him?
Well, I like the way he will analyze a specific situation, and I'll get an email from him once or twice a week, and it will make me think. And I don't always agree with him, but he's able to go out that and do that and finance that work. And so what this has created is it's kind of dismantling the media organization, but building up the individual. And I think that's kind of interesting because I don't want to put my trust in an organization. I want to put my trust in an individual. I want to say, okay, I like your take, I like your approach, that's great, rather than look at an organization themselves, because an organization has mixed agendas. I'm able to break out myself personally and do what I do. I have sponsors who support me, which is great. I wish I was supported by individuals instead of sponsors sometimes, because I get pressures around my sponsors, but I have a great relationship with every one of my sponsors. Church and state are separate. They let me do exactly as I please, which is awesome. But you can just go off and creatively pursue what you want to pursue and ask the questions you want to ask without fear of, like an agenda of your organization pushing you in a certain direction. I certainly think if you work at CNN, you have a difficulty being completely objective about politics. You have to follow a left-wing position. But that's just the way of the world, right? It is what it is. I just like that people can break out. I absolutely love what Joe Rogan has done. He's bringing. I don't agree with him and everything. I listen to certain things. Like I was listening to the interview with what's his name, Curry. I forgot his first name, and they were talking about universal basic income, and I was thinking, okay, it really would be good to have someone who understands economics come and break down what are the flaws of universal basic income, in that there's no productivity behind this, and there are better people who can argue that than I would. But what I really like about Rogan is he doesn't claim to be an expert or a specialist. He's just a normal guy who's just asking questions that other people want to ask without fear of kind of retribution or cancelling. It's very hard to cancel someone like Rogan, and I think that's really cool. I think it's cool that he gets out and does that.
What do you think of his new red studio in Texas? I'm finding it a little bit hard to adjust to that studio. It's like he's they're inside a womb or something. It's very red,
Yeah, I thought it reminded me of one of those like spaceships in
totally
films.
Yeah.
Do you know, I don't tend to watch the videos of the interviews. I tend to listen to them, like yesterday when I was mowing the lawn or when I'm out running or at the gym. So I don't tend to watch them. But I didn't know why he changed his studio. I thought his old studio was awesome. But his old studio was awesome, but it's simply because he's relocated, right? Because he's moved to Texas. He could have rebuilt the studio to look the same.
True. All right.
Maybe that's him leveling up. Who cares, man? It's his podcast, his studio. I don't really care. I just care about him getting on cool people and having cool conversations, and he's the best in the business. Yeah,
I 100% agree. All right. Well, that feels like a nice place. We'll go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round.
Whether you're an enterprise fund manager or a retail trader, buying and selling cryptocurrencies successfully requires price discovery you can rely on. Brave New Coin's liquid indices provide trusted US dollar prices for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. Featuring end-of-day or intraday outputs, you can count on the BLX, ELX, and XRPLX for accurate US dollar pricing for smart contract oracles, settlement price discovery, net asset valuation, and performance analysis. Visit bravenewcoin.com to find out more.
All right, we're back, and I am with Bedford's finest Bitcoin podcaster, Peter McCormack. And Peter, I like to finish each Crypto Conversation podcast with a very quick round, a rapid-fire Crypto Conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
I'm up for it, man. Let's do it.
All right, so I just want your hot takes, your hot fire, take your best shot. Here we go. So, Peter, where would you say that you sat on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I am definitely way towards the Bitcoin maximalist end of the spectrum. But I put it in my Twitter, I'm not a maximalist now. Sometimes I'm like trying to balance and wrestle between being what can be a cheerleader for Bitcoin, but then also like, should I be an objective journalist and ask tough questions? And so I sometimes try and like just don't allow myself to get too sucked in, so I'm like blinded from some of the issues that I think I want to cover. But I'm not interested in altcoins, but I'm trying not to be too much of a dogmatic maximalist.
Very sensible answer. I like it a lot. Okay, well, Peter, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
My firmest, good question. My firmest, it will be related to Bitcoin.
That's fine.
I think that with Bitcoin we do have the best form of money that we have ever had in terms of certain factors such as security, censorship resistance, and self-sovereignty. And I think on a regulatory level, we are starting to have a moat built around it which protects it. Things such as what MicroStrategy have done and other companies and people that have so invested now in Bitcoin. I think it's somewhere like the US, it's going to be very difficult to ban Bitcoin because of the amount of people it's going to have an impact on. I think that moat is growing.
100% agree. All right, well, Peter, I ask every guest this question, and I think it's going to be slightly contentious. Neither you or I live there. We're not Americans, but who do you think wins the American presidential election 2020?
Oh, that's a good question, because I've got a bet on this. I don't know if you know.
Yes, I have seen that. All right.
Yeah, so I bet half. So there's a Bitcoin riding on this, because I bet half a Bitcoin with American HODL it's very interesting. I bet that Trump would lose. Not that Biden would win, because Biden could be replaced. I didn't think Biden would make it to election day. Honestly, I think it's very, very tough to call. And I think a lot of people have conviction in who they believe in. So hard to call. I think I can see a solid argument for either winning. I'm trying not to be biased because of the bets I have. If I had to make another bet, now, it's too close. I think it's too close to call. I think some people think Trump has it easy, and I think they're wrong. I don't think he has it easy, and I think some people are looking at the polls of Biden think Biden's got this, and I don't think Biden has got this. I think it's a very sad state of affairs that these are the two people we have against each other. What I have noticed is that there is a swing back to Trump right now, and I can see why it's happening. I mean, he's making certain decisions that will help. And I think he is perhaps a little bit worried about the polls. I think some of his tweets reflect that. I'm going to go with Biden, but it's not because I'm a fan of Biden or would want him to be president. If I was to vote, I would vote. I probably wouldn't vote. I didn't vote in the last UK election, but if I did, I would probably vote for the Libertarian Party candidate, which is Jo Jorgensen. I can't remember her surname. But God, I'll say Biden, but I'm like coin flip.
Yeah, and I think a lot, although people they don't necessarily vote based on debate performances, but I think a lot of people are just going to be looking to the presidential debates to see if Biden can stand on his own 2 feet, as it were, in that kind of, rough and tumble setting against Trump. So that'll be fascinating to watch.
Well, if those have they confirmed the debates will happen? I mean, if they happen, I think one or two. It's either Biden gets humiliated by Trump, or Trump goes too far and humiliates himself, and
yes.
Biden handles it. Those debates will be fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating. All right, well, let's keep it moving. I'm going to slot this question back in because you mentioned it before. Just want a hot take answer only, Peter, but UBI as a potential fix for AI-induced automation, down the line, the Andrew Yang argument. Is this a good idea?
I don't think so. I don't think it solves. I've read a lot about it, but I'd have to give a educated response. I'd want to go back, but it feels like steps towards communism in some ways. I don't like it. I don't like the distribution of income in that way without productivity behind it, and that's the basics of certain economics I've read from people. There's better people to ask the question than I.
Of course.
I don't like the idea.
No problem. All right, well, Bill Gates famously said, Peter, that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. Cast your eyes forward. What does whatever you want, Bitcoin, DeFi, blockchain, what does it all look like in 10 years' time?
I think Bitcoin gets stronger. I think DeFi and a lot of these altcoin projects get weaker. I don't see DeFi as something which is consumer friendly and going to replace the current centralized banking system. I just don't. But I see Bitcoin a lot stronger. I would say in 10 years I'd expect the market cap of Bitcoin to have breached the 1 trillion. I'm quite confident in that. And all the other DeFi nonsense, I think, just continues being this game that is played by a niche group of computer literate people. I don't see it being something that is retail friendly.
Fair enough. Okay, well, William Gibson, famous sci-fi author, you will have heard this quote. William Gibson said, "The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed." Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, Peter? But most people just aren't really aware of it.
That's a great question. The future is here, but we don't even realize it. I think the dystopian vision of the world that we've seen in film is here now and happening. I think the surveillance state, the expansion of the reach of the state, the oppressive reach of the state, and the collapse of modern democracy is here right now.
Well, funny you should say that, because the next question on my hot take round list is time to get weird. Let's zoom out, Peter. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
Oh, that's another great question. I can't answer simply. What I will say is that, interestingly, I am started work on a separate podcast project where I'm looking at the fall of modern social democracy, where we've had this boom period from post-World War II to now, and now we're kind of seeing the collapse of social democracy. And whether that's a good or bad thing, I think we are living this is a revolutionary period. We've had the industrial revolution, technical revolution. I think we're going through the social revolution now in some ways or another. People are empowered, and I see dark things, see dark clouds. I think what's happening with the Uyghurs in China is holy shit, did we not learn anything from World War II? And I see some very dark things, but I see some bright, some silver clouds. I think what's happened in Belarus, where the people are not having it, they're standing up to the regime there as fantastic. But I think we're going through a social revolution at the moment. I don't know how that ends, but it's certainly, we're in a period of conflict between how the state wants us to live and how people want to live.
Yeah, and also, you know, what happens with technology, and you know, the faster we create amazing technological innovations, the more power they have to turn on us. Not just AI, but you know, social media, and just we're at the mercy of algorithms that
yeah, I think that's a bit of personal responsibility to detach from it. I'm trying to get my children to detach from it. I'm trying to detach from it myself a little bit. I think there's an interesting thing on Netflix, I think, that's just come out that I'm going to have to watch. But I think you're right. But I think it's just, we're going through a learning exercise, and I think we'll come out of it, hopefully for the better.
I hope so too. And finally, let's close this down. Let's finish this off. Peter, what is your favourite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
Oh, God, there's so many I like. Oh, that's such a good question. Because do I like it because of what it says, or do I like it because of the entertainment? Like, I'm a big fan of a film called Event Horizon.
Ah, it's a classic space horror.
Yeah, because I'm a science fiction fan, I'm a horror fan. I think it just combined the two so well.
That was dark.
I love Independence Day because the humans won.
Yes.
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think ultimately I would like to live on Endor with the Ewoks.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny because I ask that question at the end of every show, and you know, get
What's yours?
An incredible. When people have asked me, I've gone with the first Matrix film because I think it's just you know, it's a brilliant film. It's a brilliant piece of sci-fi, and yeah. But a lot of people have gone for Star Trek, and I think, you know, there's something about Star Trek that really resonates with the crypto brain.
I can't stand Star Trek. The only Star Trek I like is the second one, The Wrath of Khan.
Right.
I thought that was a really, really good film. I just can't get on with Star Trek. I just think it's like, I don't know, it's a bit nerdy for me. I'm more Star Wars.
Yeah, you know, Fran, the founder of Brave New Coin, he is a massive Trekkie, so much so that some of the meeting rooms and the Brave New Coin towers are named after different parts of the Star Trek universe.
I mean, I loved The Empire Strikes Back. That's my favourite Star Wars film. I thought it was so good. Love that film. I just never got on with Star Trek, but when you said, I was thinking things like, I love Alien. Like, I'm a massive fan of Alien 3, which was a film that was panned by the press, but I thought the way Fincher approached that, because I don't know if you know, that was Fincher's first film.
Yeah, is that the one on the kind of the prison colony one?
Yeah, and the idea that they had to defeat the aliens without weapons, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. I must admit, I found the third and fourth Alien films hard work, but 1 and 2 absolutely just peerless.
I think I'd recommend go revisit.
I probably should, because I haven't seen it in 20 years here.
Yeah, so I revisited it just because I'm a massive fan of Fincher. There's also a documentary about the making of 3, like all the crap they went through to make that film, because there were a lot of problems. But I think 3 is great. I loved it. I could almost make a show on like science fiction stuff.
Absolutely,
because there's so many places you can go with it. But a lot of science fiction stuff really is kind of like future predicting as well, which is...
Yes, exactly. I always like to say sci-fi is about humanity trying out all the possible futures that are available to us, both good and bad. Peter, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. There's not really anything else to say except hand the microphone back to you and tell the people where they can go to find you on your various platforms. I think they already do know, but yeah, give us any hints as to sort of what you're working on or what you can share. The microphone is yours. Take us out.
Oh, great. Thanks, Andy. Look, appreciate you having me on. Pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to continue with the two streams I do, the Bitcoin show, What Bitcoin Did, which is available on all platforms, and that will continue to focus on Bitcoin and the subjects that surround it, the politics and economics that surround it. And I'll going to be continue doing a lot of work outside of Bitcoin with regards to like Defiance, my other brand, where I cover kind of broader subjects outside of Bitcoin. I've got a couple of interesting projects there. I'm looking at Quadriga. I'm looking at doing a bit more to do with music, and I'm going to continue trying to become a film director. That's my ultimate goal, and that's where I want to get to eventually. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Peter McCormack. DMs are open. I'll chat to anyone as long as it's not nonsense. And yeah, just thanks for having me on, Andy. I really appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Peter.
No worries, buddy.
Boom. There you go. That was a fun one. Thank you very much to Peter McCormack. Links are in the show notes to Peter's various podcasts, Defiance, What Bitcoin Did, and of course you can follow him on Twitter. Also putting a link in the show notes to that third Alien film that we talked about. Might have to give that a rewatch. Still got mad love, of course, for Alien 1 and Aliens, the second film. God, those are brilliant space movies, aren't they? All right, that's us for today, though. Thank you very much for listening. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave and You